HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents A Grip of Time, When Prison is Your Life, by Lauren Kessler. Read by Hollis Mccarthy. The dreams have died within our hearts, grown cold and hard with time, and all the words we vowed to speak when life was young and dear died in silence, for they were words no one wished to hear. Jack Catron, Oregon State Penitentiary inmate, 1917. Do time. Don't let time do you. Common prison expression. Author's note. This is a work of nonfiction. The people in this book are real people. All the men in the writing group wanted their real names to be used. I have not knowingly changed any facts or details about their lives. I have changed the names of two people to ensure privacy. I have chronicled the events, incidents, and conversations in this book as faithfully and honestly as I know how. Most I directly witnessed. Some were written about or told to me by the men in the group. Any liberties I have taken are liberties not of fact, but of interpretation. I saw this place, these people, and these events through my own eyes, and filtered them, as all nonfiction writers do, through my own sensibilities. I mean to tell truths both factual and emotional. Chapter 1. Move to the side, he said, jerking his head to the right. I obeyed. Obeying is what you do when a prison guard tells you to do something. I had set off the metal detector. The guard, big, fleshy, bored, hardly looked at me. I wasn't a threat. I was barely an annoyance. Someone holding up the line. Step out of the way, he said again. I was moving too slowly, trying to wedge myself between the wall and the guard without touching the guard. I looked at him, thought about saying something, didn't. I was shoeless, beltless, and jewelry-free. My pockets were empty. I didn't know why I had set off the alarm, and so I stood to the side, silent, awaiting further instructions, looking over my shoulder at a scene that was becoming familiar to me. The Greyhound bus-style visitor's waiting room, with its linoleum floors and its plastic chairs, the dozens of weary young women crowding in, jostling for position, carrying their fitfully sleeping babies, holding tight to their squirming toddlers. Like me, they were waiting to be processed. Like me, they were waiting to begin the trek, simultaneously tedious and frightening, through the metal detector, down a long blank corridor, through heavy metal gates that clanged behind you, stopping at a checkpoint where you traded your driver's license for a clip-on prison ID card and placed your hand through a slot to be stamped with UV visible ink. Then, through another set of clanging gates, down an even longer corridor, past a second checkpoint, state your name, show your ID, through a third gate, and on to the heavily guarded control floor that sat at the heart of this maximum security prison. Somewhere along the line, the women and children peeled off to the big, featureless visitors' room, where they could sit and talk with their inmate husbands, baby daddies, brothers, fathers. I would continue, accompanied by an officer, 30 feet across the control floor to another gate, and up a flight of concrete stairs to the activities floor to meet with my inmate writers. This afternoon would be the fourth meeting of the writers' group I was working hard to get established at Oregon State Penitentiary, OSP. The state's oldest prison, its only maximum security facility, and the site of the state's death row, OSP is home to more than 2,000 men, although home is not the word that comes to mind to anyone who lives or visits here. The prison sits, invisible behind a 25-foot-high concrete perimeter wall, less than a mile and a half from the pretty, golden-domed Oregon State Capitol building, in the heart of sleepy Salem. Inside the walls is a 22-acre self-contained city, with the state's second-largest commercial laundry, a furniture factory, a metal fabrication shop, a call center, vocational and hobby shops, an infirmary, 2 recreation yards, and 4 cell blocks. 3 of them massive Sing Sing-style cages within cages that look like the setting of every grim prison movie ever made. Parallel rows of barred cells, 40 cells long, 5 tiers high, narrow metal walkways, nothing but concrete and steel. The drive into the prison grounds is as lovely as the prison is not. This is fertile Willamette Valley river bottom land. The penitentiary entrance is landscaped and manicured. There are brilliant green lawns and towering conifers, graceful weeping willows and stately oaks. There are rose bushes and hydrangeas. There are birds. And then there aren't. Up the set of concrete steps and into the main building, a late 19th century edifice that looks like a cross between an asylum and an aged urban high school in a not great neighborhood. There is the tired waiting room with vending machines and an old ATM and a long counter for processing visitors and a TSA-style conveyor belt and metal detector, overseen by guards like the one who had just pulled me aside. I stood, still waiting. I was not a veteran visitor, like most of the worried and weary women queuing up at the counter, but I knew the drill. Show picture ID at the counter, sign in, check pockets, stash purse in one of the 25-cent lockers, stand in line, take off shoes, wait your turn to go through. I knew how to dress, show as little skin as possible. Wear clothing that was loose enough not to be form-fitting, but not so loose as to look as if you were maybe trying to conceal something. Don't look too feminine, but don't look butch either. No jeans. The inmates wore jeans. Nothing blue. The inmates all dressed in blue. I had learned the rules, and I followed the rules. Months later, when I was steeping myself in research about prisons, I came across this chilling sentence by sociologist Megan Comfort. Correctional officers attempt to transform prison visitors into an obedient core of unindividuated, non-threatening entities that can be organized according to prison rules. That pretty much summed up the experience. The guard ordered me to check my pockets, nothing, remove any jewelry, already done, and go through again. Again the alarm sounded. I assumed that his next step was to call over a female guard to pat me down, or he could take me aside and wand me, like the TSA guys do. A hassle, but either way, I'd be good to go. I was getting antsy. My writers' group was waiting for me upstairs on the activities floor. 6 guys, all members of the Lifers Club, all convicted murderers. They were decades into their grip of time, serving either life with, the with being a possibility of parole, or life without, meaning they would die in prison. I had started working with them almost 6 months ago, coming in to run this writer's workshop I created. It was more of a struggle to make it happen than I had bargained for, and it was happening in fits and starts. 1 month I had permission to come in, the next, nothing. I was a volunteer without portfolio, so to speak. Unlike most of the non-family civilians who gained entrance to the prison, I was not part of a faith group or ministry, a veterans organization, or a 12-step recovery program. I was not sanctioned by the community college that had a contract to teach GED classes and run a small associate arts degree program, or the university that taught a smattering of classes through a national program called Inside Out. I was just a writer, looking to work with people who wanted to write. I saw writing as a way to give voice to the voiceless, which those behind bars certainly were. I saw writing as not merely self-expression, but as deep, self-administered therapy, a way to process and learn from experience, a way to understand and make sense of a life that needed making sense of. That would be everyone's life, of course. But I was thinking about the kind of lives that got people into prison, and the lives, the very long lives, those people lived once they got there. And I was thinking about not only the people who lived those lives, but also the rest of us, the ones who made the laws and paid the taxes to support the criminal justice and corrections systems, the ones who sat on juries that sentenced people to places like the one I was waiting to be processed into. I was thinking about how ignorant all of us, were about what happened inside these places. We thought we knew much more than we did. We had maybe read puff pieces about Martha Stewart's cushy 5 months at a facility that looked more like a private college than a prison. We had maybe read snarky features about Bernie Madoff strutting through the yard surrounded by groupies at Butner, the crown jewel of the federal prison system. And occasionally, we heard news about a riot. Then every few years, an expose would surface about sweltering cells in southern prisons, or cruel and ill-trained prison guards. Meanwhile, we remembered scenes from Shawshank Redemption, or binge-watched Orange is the New Black, and we figured we knew what was what. But of course, we didn't. Our ignorance, I was coming to think, was actually purposeful and, in odd ways, strategic. On the one hand, the prison system itself had a vested interest in keeping the world behind bars hidden from us. Our ignorance meant we were less likely to interfere with operations, to suggest new policies, to scrutinize budgets, to make a fuss. It made running the system easier and more efficient for those who ran the system. Of course, it also served to hide everything from outright abuses to casual cruelties to daily boredom. And it was so easy to do. All it took was tight control of the flow of information by communications and public relations staff, and creating barriers to media access. On the other hand, the prison as hidden world worked for those of us on the outside, too. The murkier and more unknowable that world was, the easier it was for us not to care. The easier it was for us to feel no connection to the people inside. What did this alien netherworld have to do with us, anyway? Maybe a lot. Maybe more than we wanted to consider. And so the other reason I was here at OSP, why I wanted to help and encourage these men to write about their lives, was so that I could learn about this hidden world, so that we all could. I could teach these men how to craft stories. They could educate me about prison life. I needed to know, I thought we all needed to know, who these people were that we put away, far away from us, for life, in a country that puts more people in prison than any other country on earth. We needed to know what life meant, when that life was spent almost entirely behind bars. I stood there, waiting, eager to get upstairs and start the afternoon workshop. But today, the guard wasn't going to let it happen. Maybe he didn't like the way I looked. Maybe he was having a bad day. I don't know. What I know is he made a spur-of-the-moment choice not to call a female officer to pat me down and not to wand me. He wasn't going to make it possible for me to get through the control point. I was frustrated, I was furious, and I was powerless. And I couldn't let it show. This same guard might be manning the metal detector on my next visit. I didn't want to make an enemy. And then, all of a sudden, I got it. I got a whiff of what it was like to live inside these walls. Walking back to the locker to retrieve my stuff, I felt almost queasy with impotence. And I felt a little crazy, that kind of crazy you feel when things that made sense all of a sudden don't. I was in a place that was all about rules, that was dictated and constrained by rules. If you knew the rules and played by them, everything was predictable, and you were okay, right? Wrong. Because prison was also a place of random acts. Knowing and obeying the rules didn't spare you from the random acts. The rules created the expectation of predictability. On the other hand, anything could happen. You were buffeted, coming and going. And you never knew when it was going to happen. And you couldn't do a thing about it. It would be more than a month before I could meet with the guys again. Chapter 2. I am standing in front of a room full of convicts. These men, 50 or 60 of them, sprawled on metal folding chairs set up in rows, have spent 20, 30, I don't know how many more years, in prison. A rivulet of sweat is snaking down the back of one of my legs, inching its way to the heel of my shoe. While one part of my brain is focused on what I am saying, a pitch for the writers' group I've been trying to get off the ground, another part of my brain is busy imagining the headline in tomorrow's paper, "Inmates hold woman writer hostage at state pen." I tell myself that it is natural to feel fear. I am in a maximum security penitentiary. I am the only female in the room. The men in the room have all done bad things, very bad things. On the other hand, there are guards here, and I remind myself this is not a room full of convicts likely to jump me. It is a room full of mostly balding, gray-bearded older men who gather every other month for an officially sanctioned Seniors' Day. It is a long-standing and long-popular event, primarily, I am told, because of the donuts, or, as displayed this afternoon on big tables at the back of the room, the oversized, greasy apple fritters sitting on torn sheets of brown paper towels. I stare out into the big, high-ceilinged space that would look like an all-purpose room in a seriously run-down middle school if it were not for the wire cages that line the perimeter. Each little cage, the size of a prison cell, bears the name of a different prison club: Uhuru, the Kato, Veterans, NAAA, Music, Asian Pacific Family, Lifers. It's the Lifers Club members I'm interested in. Those men sentenced to spend most, if not all, of their adulthoods here in prison. It's the Lifers I want in my writing group. They know the most about what it is like to live here, and I think they have the most important stories to tell. They also might be the most receptive to a new activity. Chances are, with decades behind bars, they've long exhausted the existing opportunities the prison offers. Many lifers, by virtue of their long periods of incarceration, are now seniors, sitting here eating apple fritters. Senior doesn't mean the same thing in prison as it does in the outside world, where the standard retirement age of 65 seems to be the demarcation. In prison, where research suggests that people age up to 15 years faster than their non-incarcerated peers, a senior could be as young as 45. Many states count as elderly all prisoners older than 50. At OSP, more than 20% of the inmates are older than 55. The oldest man in here is 84. In the chairs facing me, I see men who look old enough to be my father, but are probably the age of my younger brother. I see men who look like grizzled Hell's Angels, and men who look like trouble, and men who look like kindly uncles, and everyday middle-aged men, white, black, brown, who you would take no notice of on the street. They all wear blue denim jeans and dark blue T-shirts stamped with the OSP logo. I don't know if anyone is listening, but I am inviting them to be part of, or at least come just this once to, the group I'll be convening in a few minutes in a room down the hall from the fritter-laden table. I made this same pitch, find your voice, write what you know, write to make sense of it all, 2 months ago, at a meeting of a select group of prisoners, staff, and outside educators dedicated to expanding learning opportunities inside. This was after I had spent close to 6 months trying unsuccessfully to persuade the local community college that offered basic education classes at the prison to sponsor my writing group. Not hire me, not pay me, just make the group legit. I had no idea it would be this hard to volunteer my services. The presentation to the advisory group had gone reasonably well. I had talked passionately about the power of telling your own story. I had fielded questions from a couple of inmates in the group who seemed genuinely interested. There was a tall, dreadlocked guy who introduced himself as Des and said he was a writer. He was looking for opportunities to practice, learn, get better. He was a lifer, only 40, but with more than 20 years behind bars, who was working on an autobiography. There was a sharp-tongued, steely-eyed man in his late 70s, also a lifer, who stared me down and challenged everything I said, but then seemed satisfied with my responses and said he might consider joining such a group if it came to be. The advisory group handed off my proposal to the Lifers Club to see what could be worked out. The upshot was this invitation to pitch at Seniors' Day. I would piggyback our first session on this afternoon's event. The men in this room, the seniors, most of whom are lifers as well, are a speck on the tip of the iceberg. The iceberg is the 2.3 million Americans behind bars, 1 out of 9 of whom are serving life sentences, more than 30% of whom are 45 or older. In fact, those older than 50 are the fastest-growing segment of the prison population, the numbers doubling every decade since 1990. In the months and months it had taken to get to the point of making my Seniors' Day pitch, I had been busy backgrounding myself on the historically unprecedented and internationally unique epidemic of U.S. mass incarceration. I had discovered that the United States led the world in both the number of people in prison and in the rate of incarceration. Our rate is 716 per 100,000. For comparisons, Germany's is 76 per 100,000. Saudi Arabia's is 161. Russia's is 455. We account for about 5% of the world's population and close to 25% of the world's prison inmates. From the 1980s, when tough-on-crime policies led to longer mandatory sentences and fewer paroles granted, the prison population had increased by 371%, while the U.S. population had grown by 37%. There are now 4 times as many lifers behind bars than there were in 1984. 50 or 60 of them are sitting in front of me, maybe listening, as they quietly consume apple fritters and drink bad coffee from styrofoam cups. How many would follow me into one of the rooms down the hall to join the first session of the writers' group? The answer? 3. We sit on metal folding chairs in a small circle in an otherwise bare, echoey room that looks like the setting for an early Coen Brothers movie. I am now doubly nervous, first because it is the initial meeting, second because so few men show up. Make that triply nervous. I am, after all, convening a class of convicts, and not just convicts, lifers. You don't get life for shoplifting. You get life for doing something terrible. And yet, here they are, 3 of them, greeting me politely hesitantly shaking my hand, sitting patiently in their prison blues, waiting to hear what I have to say. One man, slender, clean-cut, balding, maybe mid-50s, is wearing fashionable eyewear and somehow manages to look put together, almost professional, in his prison uniform. He has an open face and a ready smile. Next to him sits a big, strapping, 60-ish guy with a blonde turning to gray handlebar mustache. He is still handsome in a fleshy way, and I can tell from the get-go that he is a man accustomed to using his charm. The third guy is sandy-haired with a deeply lined and weathered tough guy face. I mean, a tough guy face. A central casting thug face. I would cross the street to avoid him, and here he is, 5 feet from me. When I ask them to introduce themselves, I tell them that I don't want to know what they did to get in here, and I don't want to know their last names. If they tell me their full names, I know I will look them up in the system and learn more than I want to know right now. I don't want to know who they were decades ago, the men who committed the murder, the rape, the I don't know what, the men capable of such acts. I want to, at least at first, see them for who they are today. I want to be able to listen, talk, read their work, without seeing everything through the lens of their rap sheets. That sounds as if it comes from a more enlightened place than it does. The fact is, I need to stay ignorant to keep my fear at a manageable level. And I need to stay ignorant so that my judgmental self will not obstruct my ability to connect with them as writers, as people. And so, Don, the fashionable one, Jan, the charmer, Red, the tough guy. They are all lifers. They are all seniors. They have all been inside for more than 30 years. That's all I know right now. I tell them I will teach them how to craft stories about their lives if they will teach me what it is like to live the lives they do. I tell them that I think writing is both a way of connecting with others and a way of understanding and making sense of yourself. That writing is hard and takes practice. That it can be both painful and joyful and is almost always therapeutic. Because writers are always readers, I ask them what they've been reading. Don has taken many college classes and has read his share of literature and philosophy. Red is, it seems, a veteran of every self-help program the prison offers and knows that genre. He is also a committed Bible reader. Jan says he reads a lot, but has trouble remembering the last book he's read. Almost a year ago, when I was a one-time guest in a community college class offered at OSP, I had a chance to peruse the prison library. It was clear from reading the titles of the few hundred books on the shelves that the major donors were faith-based groups and 12-step programs. I wonder how I can teach them about writing if they don't have great writing to read and learn from. We begin to work out a plan for the group. They say they know other guys who are interested, but who couldn't come today. I urge them to spread the word, but I'm not exactly sure what word should be spread. Right now, we have no regular meeting time. I've been told that I can piggyback my writing group on the scheduled seniors' days, but those happen only 4 times a year. 3 months between group meetings is a very long time. In between those times, I'm not sure how I can keep some semblance of activity alive. I don't know how I will get whatever they write or give them my feedback. They have no internet access, no email. In fact, no access to a computer to type a story. But I have worked too long to get to this point to let these challenges overwhelm the enterprise.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?